me tell you.
Okay, once somebody says you are from Guinea, he don't bear Benin name. He don't speak Benin language. Yes. And you keep saying you are from Guinea.
But let me tell you how it all started. At least two reasons that gave rise to that kind of crisis, identity crisis. One is what I know that I've been witness myself. During the war, many people were killed in Asaba massacre, and then in the various communities. At that point, they told us, including myself, that if we see any Nigerian soldiers, we should tell them that we are from Benin.
Oh, they told you people.
They told them. I was told, along with my cousins,
if you see a Nigerian soldier,
that they are going from village to village, killing us.
Oh.
You understand? That if we must survive, we must deny
being Igbo.
In every conflict, there are those who fight, those who free, and those who wait to see who will win before choosing a side. During the Nigerian Civil War, the core Southeast paid the price of identity. The world watched a people bombed, starved, broke, yet they held onto one name, Igbo. But across the Niger, in Anioma land, another story was unfolding. They did not stand with the Igbo when the prize was broad. But today, when the reward is political advantage, they want full inclusion, a seat at the table, and the 6th Southeast states. And so a simple but painful question has returned. If you refuse to suffer with a people when they were breeding, should you now belong with them when they are rising? This is not tribal hatred. This is historical accountability. When the war broke out in 1967, Anioma leaders publicly argued, "We are not Biafrans. We are Midwestern Igbos, not Easterners." They distanced themselves from the struggle. They rejected ethnic alignment to avoid federal retaliation. Biafra lost land, millions of lives, properties, and political power. Anioma, meanwhile, kept safe distance, not imprisoned, not conquered, not punished like the East. It was strategic survival, but survival choices always have consequences later. After the war, Southeast Igbos had to start life from zero. £20 maximum bank return, abandoned properties, economic strangulation. Anioma did not face that reset. They prayed dual identity, culturally Igbo, politically not Igbo, depending on which side had benefits. When danger came, we are not Igbo. When opportunities come, we are part of Igbo. This is the origin of distrust today. Because true identity shows best in the time of sacrifice, not in time of benefits. Ironically, the man whose name became the earliest symbol of Igbo revolts, Major Chukwuma Kaduna Nzogwu, was Anioma. He died fighting on the Biafran side. And yet, that very region that produced him publicly denied the identity he died defending. Nzogwu's blood said Igbo. Anioma politicians said not Igbo. Even till today, many in Anioma celebrate Nzogwu as a hero, but refuse the price of his identity at the time it mattered. That contradiction sits at the center of this debate. Fast forward to today. The same Anioma elite class that once refused ethnic solidarity is now lobbying hard for the creation of Anioma State to officially enter the Southeast geopolitical zone. And leading that lobby is Senator Ned Nwoko. The same Ned Nwoko who once represented the political distance is now speaking openly about Igbo marginalization, the unjust detention of Nnamdi Kanu, the Southeast being changed in Nigeria. So what changed? Did Anioma suddenly discover their Igbo-ness, or has power finally made Igbo identity useful? That is the question history is now asking. Let us be honest. If the Southeast zone did not exist, if the 6th state was not a gateway to federal relevance, if Peter Obi was not reshaping political power from the East today, would Anioma still be fighting to join the Southeast? Or would they still be Midwest Igbo until the next opportunity? This is why many in the core East are cautious, not rejecting Anioma as brothers, but questioning the sudden timing of the love. Because the royalty, that only appears when reward is available is not royalty, it is positioning. So the real debate is not, should Anioma be part of Igbo civilization? Culturally, yes, they always were. The real question is, did they stand with the Igbo when it was dangerous? If not, should they now claim the reward of a heritage they once disowned? This is why people are asking loudly, is this unity or strategic convenience? Is this repentance or political advantage? Or is this simply history coming back to demand honesty? Anioma can be welcomed, but before the door fully opens, the question must be answered. Do you want to return as brothers or as beneficiaries? Because history remembers who breathed with you and who waited until victory before calling you family.
Addressing a large crowd. You know, and I felt that this man was not talking like me as if I was there. My life is all about people unification in our own area. That is Anioma. We're all Igbos.
Anioma is Igbo. They bear Igbo names, they speak Igbo, but some of them, I don't know if it's ignorant. You see some of them saying, I'm not Igbo, I'm from Benin. Okay, once somebody says you are from Benin, you don't bear Benin name. He don't speak Benin language. Yes. And you keep saying you are from Benin.
But let me tell you how it all started. So at least two reasons that gave rise to that kind of crisis, identity crisis. One is what I know that I've been witness myself. During the war, many people were killed in Asaba massacre, and then in the various communities. At that point, they told us, including myself, that if we see any Nigerian soldiers, we should tell them that we are from Benin.
Oh, they told you people.
They told them. I was told, along with my cousins.
You see a Nigerian
soldier
that you are from Benin?
That they are going from village to village, killing us.
Oh.
You understand? That if we must survive, we must deny
being
Igbo. You understand? So that is what I can tell you as a witness. And of course, the other one is historical. And what is that? You know, over time, we had the Benin Empire. Then we had the Oyo Empire. We have the Kanu Empire. All the empires, British Empire. You name all the empires. But of course, Igbo never had an empire.
Yeah.
But at some point, when we had the Benin Empire, the influence extended to our area. They were powerful, not because they lived with us, no, but they administered our area from where they were, from the city. And because of that, I remember, like for example, in 1972, there was my uncle was one of the crowd as a king. We were told that the Oba really had to come to give his stamp of office because we were their subjects. That's, you see how it has been historical.
Yeah.
Because the Igbos are more like the Chinese. I was with the Chinese ambassador last 2 weeks ago, and I told him that in Nigeria, the closest to Chinese are the Igbos, because Igbos are adventurous, Igbos are hardworking, they are industrious, their Igbos are everywhere. There's no village you go to in the world that you cannot see Igbo man, or even Chinese now. You go to Europe, America, Igbos, Chinese are everywhere. And, you know, they go, not because of government telling them. Igbos don't go with the government. Government is not because of government policy. Like Chinese who are in Nigeria, they're not there because of any government policies. You see, like the British people, they only go where the government approves of them to go to. Same with America, they only go where the government approves. But the Chinese and the Igbos were everywhere. So what we need to do is really to bring home all the Igbos who are outside the main heartland of Igbo, the 5 states. And I love what Ohanese has done. Ohanese's constitution is that it provides that there are 7 Igbo states. The 5 states that we know, plus Anioma
Delta, plus River State,
plus Ikwere. That's why they rotate the leadership of Ohanese amongst these 7 areas.